Absolutely. I've had all kinds of crazy situations. I'll literally be DJing and someone will tell the man that is, a promoter or just some random person that they're doing a great job.
Wow.
Like that literally has happened so many times. Like I'm literally standing behind the decks and you are just like, oh, you killing it, man. And the guy usually will be like, oh, it's her, like she's the one playing.
Wow.
So there's just so many people that it's just not even in their frame of reference that a woman could be rocking a party and they are enjoying it. Like they just, and then sometimes they'll get embarrassed and be like, oh, my bad.
All right, so let's start. So today is Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. Who are we speaking with?
Nina Soul.
How'd you come up with the DJ name?
So Sol is the sun in Spanish, also stands for source of light. And those that know me know that I bring the sunshine. I tend to have a cheerful and kind of sunny disposition, as well as an Afro Latina background. And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like originally I was going to be DJ Soul, but there was a lot of confusion and some other folks that had that. So I said, why not bring my birth name, Nina, in front of that? And yeah, that's how
I love it. I love it. What does it mean to be Afro Latina?
So it's a very interesting question because what it has always meant for me is not necessarily the same as what it means in, I would say, like current conversations. Afro Latina is a way to acknowledge the Black and African roots within a lot of Latin America. And so the fact that we have Afro-Cubans, Afro-Brazilians, Afro-Puerto Ricans, and sort of calling that out and carving out a space. And so I was calling myself Afro-Latina before I think I really understood that concept because my mom is Mexican and my dad is Black. And so being able to acknowledge and accommodate both of those identities was how I came up with, was how I identified myself.
How does being Afro Latina affect or influence your DJing, if at all?
Oh, it absolutely affects my DJing. I grew up in a home where I heard all kinds of music, obviously in African and Latin culture, music is the glue that brings us together. Like you can't have a party and there's not, music and dancing, and it just kind of is like breathing. And so growing up, I heard, soul and jazz and funk and disco, but I also heard a lot of Mexican music, salsa, merengue. My aunt was married to a Brazilian, and so there was a lot of Brazilians in our house, in my grandma's house. So I was dancing to samba, and I just always had a love affair with music from the very beginning, and I draw upon those roots, and I don't even necessarily have a language for it as much as I just kind of feel it and sense it. And when I hear something, I'm like, oh yeah, like this kind of transports me to where I come from. And yeah, so I don't know how to do anything else. It's just like breathing, it's what I'm drawn to.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Washington, D.C., and I grew up in San Diego, California. I moved when I was just a little youngin'. So Cali girl through and through. And I've been in the Bay since 2004.
And what brought you to the Bay?
So I moved to the Bay after I graduated from college. And, it's funny, I was actually kind of between New York and the Bay Area. Those were the two places I wanted to live. And I just ended up getting a better job opportunity in the Bay. And then I also have some family up here. And so it just kind of made sense.
Gotcha. Talk to us about the transition. Actually, talk to us about clubbing when you were, I guess, before you became a DJ. Do you remember your earlier club experiences?
Yeah, and it's funny the way that I came into club music and house music was probably through a non-traditional sense. So I grew up in San Diego, mostly listening to R&B and hip hop and other stuff too, but we just didn't have the same access to music and radio stations that the Bay and New York and other places have. So it wasn't until I got to college when I really started going on a music discovery journey, and I just was so curious about so many different styles of music. And one of my best friends in college, she is Ghanaian, and her older brother is from London. And so I would spend my weekends hanging out with her and her family in LA. And he is the one that introduced me to house music. He introduced me to broken beat. He introduced me to rare groove and funk and jazz. And so I almost got like this massive download at I was like probably 19, 20 years old of music that I almost was getting out of context in some ways. Like I wasn't there when the music came out, but I was getting these stories, and I was, obviously my friend, he was a DJ, and it's, other people in his family were DJs and musicians. And so it's really funny because I kind of found myself like, I didn't necessarily understand all the music, and maybe even like maybe there was just some stuff that kind of went over my head, but I had it. I had this like treasure chest of music. And so over time, when I ended up moving to the Bay and I started getting into clubbing and I started, really finding my community, I started going back to that music and being like, oh, this is amazing. And I actually, okay, I know this is Joe Claussell. Oh, okay, this is Fela. This is like, and I started having more, I was able to make those connections and actually have context. And so my clubbing experiences in the Bay Area, in large part, I was following Patrick Wilson, who I, now is an esteemed mentor of mine, Dedan, who had the Brothers and Sisters Party. And then, kind of whenever a New York DJ would come to town, or DJs from London or other places, Spinna and Rich Medina and Timmy Regisford and Joe Claussell and Denny Crivet and so on and so forth. I started getting tapped in, and I started experiencing those parties and that music. And once I started to have more understanding, and I started to understand the roots of the music, because I'm a nerd and I like to research and I like to understand like who are the artists and where did they come from and who were they influenced by. And so much of it went back to Paradise Garage, Larry Levan, Body and Soul, and all, and The Shelter. And so I started traveling to New York once a year to go to the Shelter party, to go record shopping, and just to immerse myself in that. And this was even before I was DJing. This was just kind of more as a music lover, and really started to develop that context and understanding of, where these sounds that I was really drawn to were coming from, and the cultures that made them what they were, the Afro Latino sounds, and the Black and African and South African, and just the ways that it all came together.
I love it. How do I ask this? Your first DJ gig.
So my first DJ gig, so when I first got started DJing, I always say to people that I was always a DJ without knowing it. Like I was that person that was like putting together mixtapes and playlists and mix CDs for people. but I never had records. I never had turntables. I didn't even know any DJs growing up. But when I moved to the Bay, which is the land of DJs, it was like you can just fall on a DJ walking in any direction. And so I lived in a house with 3 other DJs, and they all, you know, had gigs on the weekend. And so I would be home by myself, like tinkering and playing around with the turntables. I was collecting records. I had gotten some of my dad's records, and I had, you know, been starting to buy records. And I was just doing that for a while, just bedroom DJing. And one of my roommates, he said, you're gonna play at, you know, the bar was called Skylark in San Francisco. It's still there. You might know it. It's on 16th and Valencia. And he said, you're gonna play. It was a Tuesday night. And so I brought my records and I started this soul night. You know, I basically, after the first gig, I was like, okay, that was horrible in terms of probably train wrecking and sounding crazy, but I was hooked. I was like, okay, I'm coming back next week. This is amazing. So that was my first gig.
Describe the feeling when you're DJing and you have the crowd in the palm of your hands.
Whew, there's nothing better. There's absolutely nothing better. I describe it as just being in flow and just surrendering, and you're surrendering to that moment. You know, you're not thinking about yesterday, you're not thinking about tomorrow, you're just really dropped in and in vibration with everyone in that room. And it's just it's a magical feeling, and that's why we do it. That's what that's kind of why what I live for is those magical moments that allow us to like drop into our bodies and like really experience this vibration that connects us. Yeah, I don't even know how to, I'm not really one with words. I like to use music to communicate, but that's what I would say.
How do you prepare for DJ gigs?
So, it used to be that I would plan very meticulously what my sets were going to be. And part of the reason why I did that was, I never really officially got any DJ lessons. Like I just kind of learned just, making lots of mistakes and kind of listening to other people. So I was always a little insecure about my DJ skills. And so I would practice a set, try to perfect it. And also I was really, really scared of playing the same music as other people. So it would also make me dig a little bit deeper, because I was like, okay, I practiced my set. I can't go off the fly if somebody plays the record I was going to play. So I have to play something that I don't think anybody else is going to play, because I got to stick to the script. And so that was originally why I did it, but it kind of stuck. And I would say that, part of the way I approach it now I would say I'm not as prescriptive. I'm just because I simply just don't have the time to plan my sets the way that I used to, and even the way that I would like to. But I would say, I always approach it with an intention. What is the point I'm trying to get across? What's the story I'm trying to tell? Like, who's the audience? Where is it going to be? Am I playing at a club? Am I playing at an outdoor party? Is it online, on Twitch? What is the context? What am I excited about? Like, what are the records that are going to make me, just go crazy? And like, where's the energy in the set gonna be based upon? So I usually have, a couple of new records, or maybe even old records that are maybe new to me, or records that I just haven't heard in a while that I'm trying to refresh. And then from there, I just kind of let it flow and just kind of let the energy of the space and the people guide me. And then it just depends. Sometimes, I do an event every second Thursday called Constellations, and that's a party that pays tribute to artists born under the zodiac sign of the month. So for example, this month is Libra, so we're playing all Libra artists. So it's like Patrice Rushen and Omar and Fela Kuti and Carrie Chandler and, all kinds of folks. What's the brother's name? Anyway, my mind is going blank, but it's always a really fun challenge because it's a lot of different styles and different eras of music. And so you have to kind of find that through line. And so like, that's an example of like a theme that I get excited about. And so I'll prepare a crate that's like all Libra artists, for example. I love me a theme.
What is your intention when you DJ?
My intention is to create joy, to facilitate joy and to create the conditions for people to drop into their bodies and, just kind of get free. There's so many distractions, there's so many things that, occupy our attention, and it can keep us up in our heads as opposed to like really dropping into the wisdom of our bodies. And so I find that on a dance floor, that is when you have no choice but to, when the music is right, when the energy is right, when the vibration hits right, you drop into your body and you surrender and you let go. And I just feel like so much more is possible when we are embodied, when we are dropping into all of our senses and, creating that release for ourselves and, dealing with the stress and dealing with the anxiety and all the things that it means to be human. And so when I see people smiling or laughing or getting close to somebody or just, letting go, closing their eyes, throwing up their hands, like for me, that's what it's about. That's my intention.
Describe your DJ style.
That's a hard question. I don't know. Have you heard me DJ? How would you describe my style?
I would say it's soulful, eclectic.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say I don't like genre constraints. I like to draw upon a lot of different sounds and textures and places. One of my favorite things to do when I travel is to visit the local record store and try to get a sense of a place, and then bring those sounds into whatever sets, that I'm able to kind of carry, to kind of honor those stories and those places that have made me who I am. So yeah, I would agree with that. I would say soulful, eclectic. I'm really drawn to music that elevates the vibration, whether that's, knowledge or just, love and connection to one another. So lyrics are also important to me, like the messages that I'm putting out there in the world. I feel like, singing a song is an affirmation, it's a way to create a reality. And so we got to be conscious of our words and how we use them. So yeah, I would say I would agree with that.
Excellent. Your worst DJ gig?
My worst DJ gig. Oh man, just one.
Give us multiple examples.
Well, okay, so the one that immediately came to mind, because I actually just thought about it on Sunday because I was playing this record. I was playing a party and I was playing one of my favorite records, which is Glen Underground, Indians and Bagpipes. And I had it on vinyl, and for whatever reason, there was a candle that was burning right next to the turntable. Like, yes, it was. And this was like very early on in my DJ career. Like I just didn't know any better, you know. And so I didn't even notice it because I think what had happened was maybe I had played the record and the gig was over, or maybe I don't know what happened, but for whatever reason that record was there long enough for wax from the candle to go all over it. And then I think that was also the gig where like my hard drive crashed, and so I didn't have my music. Like it was just like the perfect storm of like all the things that could go wrong like in one gig. But the most heartbreaking was like this record that was really special to me was actually ruined, and I have not been able to get my hands on it since.
Wow. Wow. Dream collaboration. Who would you love to do a gig with if budget and connections were no options? Like dream lineup. Besides the obvious Dedan and Patrick.
I feel like I'm living the dream. Yeah, I'm playing with Patrick every month. That's for real, living the dream. So obviously the maestro, I mean Timmy Regisford, that would absolutely be a dream come true to play with. You know, I've had the pleasure of hosting Mark Francis in the Bay, and
I came to that party like probably like 3-4 years ago. Yeah, that was
yeah, he came and rocked our anniversary. Jihad Muhammad, who's another dope mentor of mine. I haven't rocked with him in person. I've only rocked with him virtually. Ron Trent is another huge influence of mine. I just absolutely adore his just tremendous talent. You know, this is such a hard question because there's not that many people that I wouldn't want to rock with. I feel like you know, I'm playing on Saturday with Moodyman and Black Coffee, and I've actually opened for Moodyman before, which is always really fun because it's like, okay, I get to go into my techno bag. I get to like, you know, kind of play like a little bit more gritty and, you know, a deeper sound than but Black Coffee is also on the bill, so I get to also tap into that energy. And so I feel like I would get excited about, there's probably not a lot of people within the scene that I would not get excited about. I would probably find something to nerd out over.
Let's talk about sexism in the scene. What's been your experience, or what have you observed? I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, that it's a little bit different. Like, do people question your skills or abilities, or, you know, are people trying to holler at you while you're DJing? Do you have that kind of experience, or is that just, you know, you go in and gig and you're good? No such problems.
I mean, absolutely. I've had all kinds of crazy situations. You know, I'll literally be DJing and someone will tell the man that is, you know, a promoter or just some random person that they're doing a great job.
Wow.
Like that literally has happened so many times. Like I'm literally standing behind the decks and you are just like, oh, you killing it, man. And like, and the guy usually will be like, oh, it's her, like she's the one playing.
Wow.
So there's just so many people that it's just not even in their frame of reference that a woman could be rocking a party and they are enjoying it. Like they just, you know, and then sometimes they'll get embarrassed and be like, oh, my bad, you know, whatever. But that has happened to me multiple times.
Wow.
Yeah, and yeah, it absolutely exists. I mean, I think the pay differential is there. I think, you know, when you look at the way that women are billed, you know, luckily I feel very blessed to have a tribe of folks. My, you know, my crew elements, you know, it's always been even though I'm working with my mentors and my seniors, you know, I've never felt slighted. I've never felt like, oh, well, you're a girl, so you have to open, or, you know, it's always been give and take. And sometimes I open, sometimes they open. So, you know, it just, I personally prefer opening. I like to open because I get to kind of like tell my story and set the tone. But I feel like in some ways that's kind of sheltered me a little bit from some of the dynamics that can happen, particularly in the Black house space. And then I would say in other scenes, because I play a lot of different styles of music, I rock a lot of different types of parties. So in a lot of cases, it's really celebrated being a woman DJ. You know, they're actually seeking me out because I'm a woman and I'm a Black woman. So that's actually worked in my advantage in some cases. But you know, in a lot of cases, it's making up for a lot of time and a lot of folks that did not get those opportunities. A lot of my elders, a lot of other women that have been doing this for a long time. It's still very uneven, and we have a lot of work to do.
Fair point. Give us an abbreviated history of the San Francisco scene then, when you first moved here, and then now.
So, that's an interesting question. So I feel like for a long time, what I experienced was that you would travel, you would cross the bridge to San Francisco to go to parties. You would, you know, that's where folks would get booked from out of town. That's where you went. And then, you know, and actually when I first moved out here, I lived in San Francisco for about 5 years, and I was DJing, you know, in the city and doing different things. And then when I moved to Oakland, I moved to Oakland for grad school. And so I kind of took some time off from DJing.
What did you study?
I studied social entrepreneurship at Mills College.
Okay.
Yeah. And got an MBA. And so what was interesting was that when I moved to Oakland was actually like really starting to establish itself and grow. And I actually had to start all over. I had to like make a name for myself in Oakland because the parties and the people and the, you know, spaces I was in San Francisco actually weren't relevant, or they just, you know, they were just very disparate. And so I moved out here at a time when Oakland actually was becoming a spot that you cross the bridge to go, you know, experience Brothers and Sisters, the People Party. You know, the new parish had just opened up around that time. You know, there was a lot of like art spaces in West Oakland, and just a lot of like avant-garde, like DIY kind of spaces, and lots of places to hear music and hear underground music. And this was before, you know, the gentrification, you know, I mean, Oakland's been gentrified for, you know, the last 20, 30, 40 years, I'm sure. But in terms of at the point that it started escalating, this was before that.
And then today, the current state of the Oakland or the house scene overall, or just the Oakland scene?
So I feel like, well, it's hard right now. So maybe pre-COVID, we can talk about, yeah, pre-COVID. I think the underground house scene is thriving. I think there's lots of parties, there's lots of DJs, there's lots of different styles. So, you know, on any given weekend where it used to be like there would be one party, or you would have to mark your calendar, like, when's the party happening this month? Like now, every weekend, there's like multiple parties happening that you can choose from, which I think is a beautiful thing, that there's enough community and enough people that, you know, it warrants several events. And so, yeah, I feel like we're making a name for ourselves. You know, there's DJs that are getting recognized nationally, internationally. We have, you know, obviously veterans like David Harness and, you know, Patrick Wilson, who's been doing this for a long time, JV Velasquez, and then a lot of, you know, emerging and up and coming artists and producers that are making a name for Oakland. So it feels like, you know, there is absolutely a vibrant scene out here. And it was actually really cool to be in New York a couple of weeks ago at the Shelter anniversary where Patrick was playing, and see like all these Bay Area people there, like all over the place. So that was also really, really exciting. Mhm.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, you just asking all the easy questions today, huh?
This ain't your regular interview.
That she leads with love and light and soul, and brings joy and healing and community, and integrity into everything that she does. And if Nina Soul's playing, you know you're gonna be all right.
You should get a t-shirt that says that. That's the slogan.
Put
Nina
that on
Soul.
the tombstone.
That's gonna be just your presidential slogan campaign for 2024. When you and Kamala are running together. What advice would you give to the next generation?
I feel like I could take advice from the next generation because they're super inspiring. But, you know, I think just like, don't be afraid to just, I mean, this is so cliche, but just don't be afraid to be who you are fully. Like sometimes there can be pressure to feel like you got to fit into some sort of mold or some sort of box. And, you know, coming up, I never really saw anyone that looked like me that was doing what I do. I mean, there was not a lot of people even playing the style of music that we love. But, and even within that, you know, I sometimes would like feel the pressure to have to choose, like, do you play house music or do you play, you know, hip hop or soul, or, you know, and I feel like I never wanted to feel boxed in any sort of way, which can feel challenging when, you know, people want to put you in a neat and tidy box and present you in a certain way and market you. And so I would just say, you know, honor who you are and the unique gifts that only you can bring. And just trust yourself, you know, trust that what you're doing is speaking to people, and you'll find your people, you'll find your tribe. You know, people recognize when you know, you're in your purpose and you're in your flow. You know, they'll be drawn to you because they recognize that.
And what do you do when you're not DJing? Do you have a day job?
I do, yeah. I work with Black businesses, getting them access to funding. I work at a financial innovation firm called Runway that's run by Black women, a team of Black and brown women. And yeah, when I'm not DJing, I am a financial activist trying to move money to our folks.
Oh, we need to talk offline. I'm an angel investor.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and I've invested in a few companies like Calm.com, a meditation app, and Palantir, and a couple companies. And I'm actually starting another podcast specifically on, I just put the domain name today. It's called the Angel Connect. And my idea is basically to interview angel investors, how they think about investing, how they think about deploying their capital. But there are lots of Black and brown founders I've met who have an idea, but they're not really ready to get funded. They're not ready for prime time. And so I want to give them a platform to talk about their businesses in an attempt to give them exposure, and then also give them feedback in terms of what investors look for, like traction and stuff like that. So I'd love to chat with you about financing and how you think about that and funding investors as well, but we can take that offline.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have a very anti-capitalist perspective when it comes to
I
how to
love that.
move money in a non-traditional kind of way, particularly for Black and brown people who've been extracted from for centuries. And so, yeah, I would love to have a conversation about how to do that in a way that honors, our stories and our legacies.
Oh, hell yeah. Perfect. We'll connect offline for that. We talked about the San Francisco scene. We talked about DJing. We talked about your background. We talked about the future and the legacy. Let's talk about the dance floor. How do you feel about ciphers and circles?
I think that there is a way to be on the dance floor and be in community and be cognizant of your impact and the space that you take up. And actually it's funny because, we are nothing without our dancers, without our house dancers, our elements. We have such a strong and beautiful community of dancers that support us. And we also, in the last iteration of our party, we were in a very small space, Spirit House Gallery, you may know of it. And so it actually became more of a visible reality where, you have to be, you can't actually take up an entire, section of the dance floor without impacting other folks. And so it was something that, we had conversations about. We actually wrote a mission statement where we sort of acknowledged our values and what it means to show up in community and how we are on the dance floor and the way that we honor each other and respect each other. And so it's something that, I love to see the artistry and the creativity. I love to see the circles. And I just also love to see the conscious awareness of the space that we're taking up and the way that we're impacting the folks around us.
Well said. I love that. I love that. COVID, how did it affect our scene?
Yeah, I mean, COVID has been really, really devastating for, the arts and culture and music scene, just because, our whole livelihood of gathering and sharing space was completely halted. And so unfortunately, a lot of venues, particularly smaller Black and brown owned venues, were the ones that suffered and didn't have that safety net and didn't have the resources to not be in business for 2 years or, a year and a half, and still survive. And so that has been really difficult, on the one hand. On the other side, there's also been a lot of creativity because we are resilient. And so we get creative. And so seeing the way that we have used social media and streaming and finding ways to connect with each other when we can't be in the same space has also opened up. It's just kind of made our world it's just opened up our community so much more. And so I feel like that's been a beautiful gift as a DJ as someone whose mission is to share, you know, good music and create community, we've still done that virtually. And we've gotten really creative. You know, we're doing more events outdoors, you know, over the summer. You know, Elements started doing events at Township Commons, which is a waterfront park. And that was a dream come true. You know, it was really beautiful to be playing by the water and open air and, you know, tons of space and place for kids, you know, for folks that love coming to the club, but maybe couldn't come, you know, at night. You know, they could go have their kids running around and they can come and dance and get their life. And so there's been a lot of unexpected surprises and silver linings. But you know, we're still making sense of it. You know, obviously we're looking for a new home and finding the right ways to gather safely. And you know, the pandemic is not over, so you know, we have to be you know, conscious and smart about the way that we do things. And we also know that we need these spaces. Like, people need to dance, people need to be in community, especially in this time that we're living in, where there's so much stress and suffering and anxiety. And so being in your bodies and dancing and listening to music and connecting with people we know is the antidote. So it's not if, it's just how we do it.
Last question. What's next?
What's next? What's next is dinner, because I'm hungry. No. What's next? Well, yeah, just like feeling really inspired by a lot of the opportunities that myself and Patrick have been attracting. You know, there's some cool things that we have in the works. I'm actually playing in New York officially. I think I can say it now. I've been booked in New York. You know, I've played in New York before, but it's always been, you know, I've traveled and I just happen to be in town and I might pick up a gig. But getting an invitation and getting booked to come to New York and play is such a amazing honor and like a dream come true. And so I think getting that acknowledgement from a place that I draw so much inspiration from is really meaningful. And you know, going deeper in the place that I live, in the place that I love, which is Oakland and the Bay Area, and being able to spread this music and you know, recalibrate our community after, you know, being apart for so long. I am learning production, so that's also in the works, just in the very, very early stages of, you know, trying to find my voice and my sound. So, you know, my vision is I would love to continue playing music around the world, around the country, wherever, you know, wherever I find, you know, these like-minded individuals, and you know, keep spreading the message and be part of you know, I feel like I'm part, I mean, I'm not that young, but you know, I am part of, I think, the next generation of folks that want to keep this culture alive and preserve it and honor, you know, our elders and our ancestors and all the people that have given us this culture that we love so much and hold so dear. And so I don't take that responsibility lightly. Like, I take it very seriously, and I try to do it with a lot of humility um and gratitude. And so I think, yeah, as far as you know, I can go is I'm willing to go.
Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to cover in this interview?
No, you asked a lot of questions and a lot of really hard hitting questions. Like I said, I don't love interviews and talking. I'd rather let the music do the talking, but it was actually a pleasure to chat with you and to get to meet you and put a face to the name, because obviously you're involved in preserving and keeping the culture alive. And so, and thank you for all you do to support us and promote our events and spread the word and showing up. And so, yeah, thank you.
I promise the next time I come to your gigs, I'll actually come and say hi.
Yes, please do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful evening.
Yes, thank you. Take care, Mama.
Okay, bye.